What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and are you ready to set some intentions this week? This is a busy one. We got planetary ingresses all over the place, but this is really nice because all of the all of them, all two of them, the benefics are moving into really strong places. Venus is about to get home, settling into the comfortable pastures of Taurus. Jupiter, Big Papa, is about to jump into the pool of Cancer. Is going to be a treat. And then we even got Mercury that's going to be dipping in there with Jupiter too. It's going to be a good old time. And we have a lot of mercurial transits. And we're going to really get to experience different sides of Mercury. Mercury in its home where it's zipping in Gemini, and then Mercury when it's in the intuitive waters of Cancer. So we got a lot to cover here during this video today, but before we jump into that, if you're new here, again, my name is Justin. And one of the things I do on this channel is talk about the Celestial News Weekly, the chit-chat that goes on up in the sky. And the week that I'm going to be covering is June 5th through June 11th, 2025. And let's jump into this thing, because right off the bat, on June 5th, that's a Jupiter day. Starting this thing off is Mercury. Mercury is going to be forming a sextile with Mars, and this is going to be happening at 3:09 p.m. And this is happening at 23 degrees and 42 minutes. Mercury is in Gemini and Mars is in Leo. And this would be, I think, really this week starting up, considering that we have a number of planets getting ready to change signs. This would be a great time to be thinking about where do you want to put your energy, because Mercury is going to be where our mind, how we think, how we communicate, how we learn, knowledge, things like that. And Mars is our drive, our passions, our desires, and the courage to take those actions. And with Mercury being here, one in its home sign, this would be a great time. Oh, well, I guess let me talk about the sextile first, so you see I'm so excited. The sextile energy. This is an easy flowing energy. This is one that can create excitement, it can create opportunities, but it's something that it can be a softer energy if you're not paying attention to it and paying attention to those subtle shifts there. But Gemini and Mercury can be Mercury and Gemini can be very perceptive when it takes a moment and gets quiet. So this can be a really great time to, even though Gemini can be about communication, a form of communication is listening, and understanding what's coming through and where the energies are trying to lead you, because that Mars in Leo is really kind of focused on our soul growth, because it's looking towards the sun for guidance right now. It's under the responsibility of the sun. So this, I think, can be a great time to starting this whole thing off, because we start with Mercury sextiling Mars and then end it sextiling Venus. So we set that intention and then we start getting the things that we're attracting there. But that would be one way that I would work with these energies. But see again where you have Gemini and where you have Leo and where these aspects are activating for you. And especially if you have any planets or points around this may be working more personally with you. This is actually happening within a few degrees of my Leo, or of my Leo placements, obviously, but of my Mars placement. Pretty much, I'm getting close up on a Mars return here soon, and I've been thinking quite a bit about that here. Quite about here as of late, where I'm directing my energies, where things are going, and yeah, it's starting to shape up. But yeah, these would be some things that I would be considering. Allow yourself to be curious about where you're going to next and how you're going to get there. What are some new things that you need to learn? Because then we get into the first planetary ingress that's going to be happening. Oh well, actually, before we jump into that, let me backtrack a little bit. The next aspect that Mercury is going to be having is a square with the North Node, and this is going to happen at about 5:28 p.m. and this is happening at 23 degrees and 54 minutes. Mercury's still chilling out in Gemini, and the North Node is at 23 degrees 54 Pisces, and that means that the South Node is at that same degree but in Virgo. Now, when we're throwing the nodes in the mix, and especially when we're talking about a square, the squares can be this tension point. There could be maybe some frustration, some action is being called, something's being riled up there. And I like to think of when we have aspects, especially a square with the nodes, this is that fork in the road type of moment. And you're choosing which way we're going from here, choosing that trajectory. Because how I like to work with the nodes, or how I like to think about them, the South Node is where you've been. This could be where you call upon, think about all the past, the choices that you've made. all of them, and how they've led you to where you are, and what are the ones that we want to continue going forward, and where are the ones that we want to, what decisions do we need to release there? Because you got to think too, or something neat to think about, the South Node is shaped almost like a cauldron where it's accumulating things, and then the North Node is like dumping things out. And I like to think of the North Node as where you're going. This is new uncharted territory, or maybe it's charted territory, but maybe it's just manifesting in a different way, depending on the situation there, because we can make similar choices, but it can have a totally different. I've been married twice to the same person, and it's a totally different marriage from the first one to the second one. So that doesn't have to change a thing, or that aspect, even if it's the same, the results can still be very different, with the North Node. But I would say when I think about the North Node, it's like an area that you're looking to master wherever you happen to have this, now Pisces energy. But it's just looking at, where the decisions that you've been making thus far, how they've been supporting your soul growth, and where do you want to going forward? Do you really think that this is doing all the things? Is this the path that you've chosen? Is it keeping your mind active? With Mercury here being strong in Gemini, what kind of information has it brought into your world? What sort of conversations has it brought into your world? Have you had moments of silence in between all of this, or has there maybe been too much silence and not enough conversation, not enough getting the energies out there? A lot of questions I think can get brought up with this energy, and this can be a great time. One, you're thinking about how you've been utilizing your energy, and then what action am I taking from here? And the mind is still in a very quick place in Gemini, where it's like you can make these changes, and even these sort of small incremental things can have these really big impacts right off the bat, and then it's just sustaining that with that while that Mars is still here in Leo, and then we'll refine it once it moves into Virgo, which we'll get into next week. But then with all that, we've been contemplating. We did some heavy contemplation in those couple of hours. But now, with that, Venus, the lovely Empress, moves into her home sign of Taurus. And then this is happening at 9:43 p.m. And what I really like about Venus in Taurus is that this is where things really get grounded. The relationships get grounded. I feel like it's easier to harmonize things. Or at least there's more of an invitation to work at nature's pace here. Because Venus is very creative in Taurus. This is where Venus, I think, in Libra, Venus forms great relationships. It's great with the words, poetry, and things. But I think that Taurus, even music, I think with Libra. But I also think music with Taurus. This could be a great time to listen to some nature sounds, or just like more kind of calming, sort of general music, something to relax you, to introduce working with plants, working with animals, doing more kind of luxurious things for yourself. Making time for just like self-care, just for time for just like, and again, to allow your relationships to even take a bit of a grounded approach, because there's been a little bit of energy. Last week was a little bit lighter, but now, even though we're getting ready to have some big shifts here, Venus is inviting you to help you to take those steps and get those things tangible now. That's the beautiful thing about Earth energy, is that it helps things materialize. And with Taurus, these things that you start up and that you start, if you make these conscious decisions and you're starting to attract more of those things, Taurus can pull, when it comes to resources. I like to think of the farmer archetype. The more you tend to the land, the more you get back from your crops. So the more that you start nurturing this bigger growth for yourself, and which we're going to talk about actually in the next transit, but if you support being in these places of, these things that are just elevating you, making these just conscious decisions, like, I notice I'm weaker in this area, I want to strengthen this. Maybe it's money matters, maybe it's relationships, maybe it's the home, maybe it's spirituality, maybe it's career, whatever this is. Venus can bring again some great energy to this, some real creative, and really kind of help that area. And again, look at the Taurus area of your life, because now Venus wants this space. This is where Venus is at home and where things can really flourish here. So just some things to think about there, but give me one moment. All right, we're back, and that's basically all I had for my thoughts on that Venus and Taurus there. So let's make the most of it, because this next energy that we're getting into on Sunday, the 8th of June, at about I probably meant to do. let me think. Okay, I did my notes weird. It'd have been about 1:12 p.m. Mercury is going to form a conjunction with Big Papa. Should have caught that one sooner. But Mercury is going to make a conjunction with Big Papa, and this is happening at 29 degrees and 45 minutes of Gemini. Now, I think that this is interesting that this is happening at that final degree of Gemini, right before both of them are getting ready to enter into Cancer. One, I really think that this is an invitation to take all of the things that Jupiter brought, all the information, because this has been, we know we've been in this Jupiter in Gemini for about a year now. And Jupiter is not at its best in Gemini, but one thing that Jupiter has brought is a lot of information, a lot of thoughts and a lot of things to get curious about in areas that we can explore and expand. So that is one, because when you think about the conjunction, this is a fusion of energies. So that mercurial, that thinking, communication, understanding, reasoning, logic of Mercury is fusing with that expanding worldview, optimistic and enthusiastic, abundant energy of faithful, spiritual energy of Jupiter. And how have you understood this growth that Jupiter has brought for this Gemini portion in your chart? Because the next time that Jupiter and Mercury have this conversation, it'll be when it's in Cancer. So this is something to think about, or at least I think so. Well, at least they should. Yeah, probably the next time they'll talk should be in Cancer. But yeah, this would be a really great time to just kind of meditate on what are the things have you grown in, what information's coming with you, and what you need to leave behind, what is just, because that's the thing I think with Jupiter and Gemini, it can just create a lot of noise. It can be, Gemini is more kind of curious about all the little things, where Jupiter is, again, more kind of big picture. So I would just look at where you've been, where there's just been maybe a lot of clutter that has been accumulated as well. And again, just like clear that space out, because then once Mercury moves and then once Jupiter moves, it's going to be a whole different ball game. But this would be, again, because let's talk about what I like to do with the conjunctions, and mainly with the conjunctions is what I like doing in the retrograde points, is talking about the Sabian symbol of these degrees. And this one happens to be phase 90 of Gemini. And this talks about a parade of bathing beauties before large beach crowds. And the keynote for this is the setting of social standards through personal excellence and competition. Now, this I think we are in a great time, especially with Jupiter getting ready to move here into Cancer, where it's exalted. This can be a great time to, these lessons that I learned while Jupiter wasn't at its best, while it was still learning about itself in ways that it can expand, because it's interesting how Jupiter goes from this place of unfamiliarity to this place of celebration and excellence. And so this would be a great time, again, to not necessarily, when it talks about competition, I don't think that it should ever be where we're comparing ourselves to others, but it's just if you're noticing that, oh my goodness, people are really kind of elevating, what can I do to get to that? What things do I need to emulate? How can I achieve my personal excellence? And that's the thing I think is really kind of keying in on what that means for you, and not doing this as a means for just displaying, because this is not, because what we do is essentially, I think, benefits everyone else as well. But I think that this is to show people that if I can do it, you can do it too. This doesn't have to be where it's just a select few of these bathing beauties that have been, that have been the standard of social excellence, or of social excellence. That doesn't mean that we can't all achieve that level, but just in a different way. But now it's almost too where I'm thinking from the place of the beauties now. I think that this gets to the place where, we've been in the rehearsal sort of stage for this now. And now with Jupiter getting, because this stuff here, these benefics are getting ready to do some really great work here over the next couple of weeks, at least while Venus is, while both of them are in strong signs, but especially Jupiter over this year. This is the time where it's I've been practicing, I've been doing this thing. Now, how do I want to show up? How do I want to celebrate the accomplishments that I've done? What has this all been for? What is, I think there's a lot of bigger questions that I think this conjunction is kind of asking as well. Some things to, asking yourself, like, and again, for yourself and where you're at on your journey, have I been bringing it? Or do I know that I can do more? And that's not to say we're tackling all of the things, like it's just like if I had to pick one area that I want to be a bit more exalted in, what does that look like? And then as you start making those smaller steps, they equal big steps. You know how that thing goes, a big old domino effect. So, and I think that this can be something where you ask yourself these questions and then you can get a real feeling of what that's going to be like. Because let's talk about the next energy. We get into our second ingress here, which is Mercury, that's going to enter into the lovely waters of Cancer, and this is happening at about 3:59. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, so it's definitely at 1:12 p.m. that conjunction is happening because then at 3:59, yeah, then Mercury is going to enter into Cancer. And when you think of Cancer, Cancer is the cardinal water sign. They're ruled by the moon. There's a lot of fluctuation and cycles that happen, but Cancer is the root of emotions. When we're thinking about that water energy, Cancer is tapped into the primordial waters. They can sense that flow, and I think that Mercury here is honestly, I think out of all the water signs, I like Mercury in Cancer, I think, the most, because it's where the mind and the feelings are kind of as one, because now Mercury is under the pace of the moon, because the only thing that moves faster than Mercury is the moon, like as far as like how long it takes to go around a chart, and the moon doesn't retrograde. So I think that this can be a really great time to just feel what that sense of personal excellence would be like, and then allow that intuition to lead you. And it to be these intuitive nudges that you're feeling. I think that this is where Mercury can make sense of intuition, where you can go on where you can really understand the speech of your soul, in a sense. When you get this nudge to this feeling to do this thing, it doesn't have to make sense. You just do it. You've received the message, and then see what that happens. This is a very, I think, poetic placement for Mercury. I think Mercury in Cancer has just a way of evoking feelings, and just knowing just the right thing to say, the right thing to do. I know some people who have Mercury in Cancer, and I mean, there's just this it's abundant. I think what Mercury in Cancer can do, just how it can, just really feel its way through a conversation. And that's something too. I think that this energy really can help us not just see what we're moving through, but really sense what other people are moving through, and maybe even how to kind of coax those feelings out of people, kind of stir those emotions, and be that display of personal excellence and inspire people. I think that's another thing that Mercury in Cancer, it all starts, those actions, they start with a feeling, and that feeling of like, oh my gosh, like after you've watched someone do like a great performance, like, oh my gosh, like what do you do with that? Like how does that initiate, what do you want to initiate with that? Like, oh my gosh, they can create this, I want to create my version of that. But and that's the thing too, I think, is just remembering that it's tapping into your source and how you express that source there. So I think that's really something lovely. But I think just on even just a general level, this Mercury in Cancer can bring a lot of nice conversations. I think, again, allowing us to really kind of speak from the heart, to speak from a place of love, I think that you could really do a lot with that nurturing energy. This could be a lot of a great energy that listens, to listening with that sort of empathy and compassion that I think that Cancer has. I think that can be a really nice way of working with this energy. But let's get to the next one, because on a moon day, the 9th of June, at about 3:48 a.m., Mercury is going to, now having just freshly and barely a degree into Cancer, Mercury's forming a square with Saturn. And this is happening at 0 degrees and 59 minutes. Mercury's in Cancer and Saturn is in Aries. Now, the square here, I could see with this, because Saturn has now kind of settled into, slowly getting settled into Aries, but it's already been in its retrograde shadow for a while. Saturn's going to, when did it enter its retrograde shadow? At about, when it was at about 25 degrees and 9 minutes of Pisces. And that's where it's going to retrograde back here soon in almost a little less, in a little over a month. Saturn's going to be going retrograde soon. So this would be one where it's just like, how have you been understanding these energies? Because now we're having a square between cardinal signs now. This is a new conversation that we're having with Saturn, because it's been the same kind of fluid, sort of mutable energy with, whenever they've been having this conversation with Saturn. But now it's like we want to initiate something, and now we're really kind of maybe feeling not just where the tension is, but this I think can even be an understanding of why there's tension, or at least understanding that, because this is an energy, this is happening between water, cardinal fire, and cardinal water. And I even think that Aries and Cancer, where they are very different signs, I do think that they have this similarity where both of them, Cancer initiates from a feeling. And it's similar with Aries. Aries isn't going to do something that doesn't light them up. They work from will. From if they will it, they'll do it. Whereas Cancer, if they feel it, they'll do it. And so I think that there's something there about working with those energies, because it's water and fire are very different than air and earth. I think we kind of understand the air and the earth pretty well, I think, as a collective, but the water and fire may be something that can be a bit more refined in thinking about that relationship. But this could be where you're feeling this growth. You're sensing that there are these things that are getting ready to happen. There is the pace, the energies are accelerating us in a way. And it's like, what do I do with that? How do I make sense of that? What am I actually feeling, and making sense of those feelings? Understanding how do I want to put this? Understanding when it feels right to do something, when I'm feeling inspired, when this really feels like my true calling, and when something is more kind of a waste of time, or something that's keeping me distracted from my true goal there. That's what I could see that this square can be coming up there. And look to see where you have about 0 degrees, but within a few degrees of either direction of this Cancer Aries axis, because again, this one may be working with you more personally. Definitely if you have a lot of cardinal, or if you have any cardinal placements around this, that's going to be Capricorn, Libra, and then Aries and Cancer as well. So this one may bring a little bit of tension there, but still, I think an opportunity to move forward and grow, a chance for you to expand yourself, because then let's talk about the transit of the week, the transit of the year. Dear Jupiter, Big Papa, is entering into, I'm just getting chills just thinking about it. I've been talking about it for months. Jupiter is entering into Cancer at about 2:03 p.m. Now, this is where Big Papa is exalted. And when a planet is exalted, that's where the planet is most celebrated. I really think that this is an energy where Jupiter is just expanding the vessel. It's expanding the receptacle so that you can really receive the healing cancers, or healing water of Cancer. Cancer is such a nurturing, it's a very nourishing energy, that I think that Jupiter in Cancer brings. This allows you to really feel yourself on a deeper type of level, really feel where that you can grow, because again, if you can feel it, then you can be it, and that's what I think that this is going to, because now Jupiter's over this next year is going to be under the rulership of the moon. So there are going to be more emotions churning through. This is not just, because just for example, for me, where this is a great energy for Jupiter to be in, this is going through my 12th house. And 12th house themes are, they're kind of tough, but this is where Jupiter may be bringing up some healing. It may be through bringing up some things, but things that I don't think it'll be something that you're surprised with. That this is bringing up. This is going to be something that Jupiter's just like, hey, you've been dealing with this for a while. Let me lift that weight off of you. Let me help shoulder some of this for you so that you can really get a grip on what you've been feeling through, why you've been feeling through it, and knowing that it wasn't all just for nothing. Or Mars went through Cancer and retrograding through that, and just was just bringing just energy, and now Jupiter's coming through and just like bringing in it's like after a drought. Jupiter's coming in and bringing in the rain. And this might feel like maybe a flood for some people at first. It's not to make light of this energy. It just depends on what your relationship with the Cancer portion is of your chart. And Jupiter's going to bring some water here. And this could be a very soothing, I think, transit for you. Because again, this is where Jupiter is most celebrated. And where where their highest expressions are more easily accessible. And so I really think that, and not just, I think just for oneself, I think that this will help bring about, again, a stronger sense of compassion for what we all have been going through on this journey. And think back to when Jupiter was in Cancer for you. This would have been probably around, I think it was like 2013, I think was when Jupiter was last in Cancer, but it would have been about 12 years ago. So, and I personally remember I was like probably like that year, like that little bit before, I was kind of going through it, like a real kind of just kind of deep, just deep depression. And I do remember starting to feel a lot better. When I reflect back on that period of time, that was right before I even met my partner, but I was starting to set goals for myself. I took some time and was just like really kind of analyzing, like, what am I doing with myself? I want more. I wanted to get a promotion. I wanted this thing. So it's like, okay, let's start doing this stuff. Let's start going this. Let's start doing that. And I just remembered the energy starting to feel a lot lighter. And just like really kind of just like almost like Jupiter just like putting you in just like a pool, something where just like, again, of just like, yeah, just it's almost like just like a warm bath or something like that. Just something really cleansing. It's cleansing the body, it's cleansing the nails, just everything's just clearing up with Jupiter in Cancer. So I think that this is, again, a wonderful energy that we're going to be in for this next year. Even though it's like still going to be forming that square with Saturn, it's not going to just all be tough, or all be just easy, the things that we're moving through. But I think we can get some really great results while Jupiter is in Cancer, and I would make the most of this energy for sure. Now let's get to your last one here. You know what? With all of these ingresses and things that are happening, if you're wanting to, while I'm talking about all this chart stuff, if this is something that you want to get more into, you want to analyze where this is coming up for you, how this energy is working in your chart, what is your relate? Do you have, how many planets do you have maybe in Cancer or in Aries or anywhere else for that matter? Then down in the description box, there's a list of the prices for the services that I provide. And if you have any questions as far as like how to, the things that I go over and stuff like that, my email is in there as well. So feel free to ask me any sort of questions there. But let's go ahead and get into your last transit, because on a Mercury day, the 11th of June, at about 12:41 p.m., Mercury is going to form a sextile with Venus, and this is happening at 5 degrees and 40 minutes. Mercury is in Cancer and Venus is in Taurus. And so now this is where we've been, we've been feeling through this. We've been in this Jupiter transit only just like a couple of days, but you can start to get a feel for what's going on, maybe starting to comprehend what Jupiter is bringing up for you, where Jupiter, again, is trying to expand your receptacle, expand the vessel to be able to hold more of the holy water that Jupiter is, this purification that this Jupiter is bringing. And then again, with that sextile energy to Venus, is taking that understanding and then understanding how to ground that. Okay, what can I maybe create from that? Maybe this is creating a new dialogue between the relationships in your life. Thinking about how, just being able to communicate, just articulate maybe the emotions that you're feeling better. This could be maybe you find a mode, a medium to express this thing. Maybe you're building something, maybe you're painting something, maybe you're dancing something, whatever that might look like. But this is a really nice transit. I think something to definitely like I just got like a treat yourself type of day. allow yourself to really kind of settle in, especially now that Jupiter, I think really, again, while, especially while Venus is in Taurus, this whole little period of time here, allow yourself to, again, to sit in those energies of, where you have Cancer activated for this long term. Honestly, too, where you have Aries activated, just because now Saturn is going to retrograde. But then, this is great. It's a great time now that we've got an idea of what Saturn's doing, because it's not even entering that deep into Aries before it pulls back. So this could be where it's like, okay, Jupiter's supporting me this way so that Saturn can push me this way. And this is where Venus right now is just like, I think where Venus will be, of course, she'll be moving around a few times, or at least one time while Jupiter's there. But this could be where, like, okay, this is how I want my relationships with whatever that looks like to go forward. This is what I want my world to look like. This is how I want to tend to my land. And this is where I want to grow. So, yeah, make them... even though this is a busy week, it doesn't necessarily feel like an overwhelming one. Maybe a little bit of a quieter one at first, just like allow yourself to be in the feeling of it. Feel through it with, I guess, take it from someone who's got their sun in Cancer. Feel through it. Allow yourself to feel through it as much as that makes sense, and if it does get to where maybe it overwhelms, finding different Venusian things, with that sextile to Mercury, coming up with some ways to help you process these emotions in a healthy way, in a constructive way, whether that be through, again, different modes of creativity. Maybe this is, talking with someone, getting out in nature. That would be lovely while Venus is in Taurus. I mean, really try to, especially if the weather is supporting that, even when it's like raining and stuff, like, to go appreciate, find the beauty in all of that. I think that this can be a really, really wonderful time here for us all, and of course there's going to be challenges always, but, there's beauty always too. So just something I think to think about there. But that's all I got for you. But, also down in the description box, since Jupiter now is under the rulership of the moon, this would be a great time to come check out my other channel, the Chariot Friends, because I talk about, all I talk about is the lunar astrology. And this full moon that's getting ready to happen here with this full moon, when is the full moon? I have to pull that up. But yeah, watch this full moon, because this one is where the moon and Jupiter are going to be in mutual reception with one another, and it's like the first full moon with, I think it's going to be lovely. It's going to be absolutely lovely. So, yeah, if you want to follow that and see where the moon's moving, I do release a video every time the moon changes signs, so that's there for you. And it's called the Chariot and Friends, and we do a tarot card reading and an I-Ching reading at the end, so a bunch of things to maybe inspire some, evoke some feelings out of you. So, but until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the roof. And I will catch you on the next one. Mercury Day.